So good to see everybody this morning. It's wonderful to see so many bright faces. I don't know about you, but usually on Sunday mornings, people go to church and there's some conversation about God. And many of us, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I can speak for myself. When I first came to Buddhism, partly it was because I didn't want to hear anything about God. I was done with God. And it brought me right back to God. There's a saying in Zen, if you want a stick, I'll take it away. If you don't want a stick, I'll give one to you. And that's kind of what happened with me and God. I didn't want anything to do with God, so Buddha said, okay, you don't want God? Well, you can have no God for a little while, but I'm going to give you God back. Not only am I going to give you God back, I'm going to give you multiple gods back. And so now I have to reconcile with that. What does that mean? What is God about? So the title of this talk I'm going to share is called Gods, No Gods, and the Climate Crisis. Finding Calm in a Hot World. And actually, this is an extension of talks I've been giving the past few months on a fascicle Zen Master Dogen's about cooking, instructions to the cook. And I've been going through different parts of these instructions because keep in mind, Zen practice is very, very practical. We find the spiritual in the ordinary. And cooking is a big part of our practice. We like to meditate, and that's fantastic. I love meditation. But every ordinary experience can be a spiritual experience. And certainly that's true of the process of cooking. And so one of his fascicles, this is called the Eihei Shingi. They're basically rules for how to comport oneself in a monastic setting, in a Zen temple, particularly if you are training for any length of time. And it goes through the daily rituals of a day and what you do from the time you wake up in the morning till the time you go to sleep at night. It includes washing your face. It includes brushing your teeth. It includes keeping yourself clean. It includes how you comport yourself with other people in the community, in the Sangha. So if you have any doubts about what you should be doing or how you should be doing it, it's all choreographed. It's all in there for us. We don't have to think about it too hard. And yet, at the same time, that everything's kind of laid out for us in a Zen temple as far as what to do and how to do it. At the same time, there's this wonderful openness to keeping your koan alive, your question alive, your deep question. And that in Zen, the question is so important to have. And that's when I came to Buddhism, I was questioning whether God existed or didn't exist. And that was based on things that were going on in my personal life as well as what I was studying academically. And I didn't feel like I had permission to ask that question. Does God exist? I couldn't feel like I could ask that question in the church. I have deepest respect for my religion of origin, deepest respect. But at the time where I was in my life, I didn't feel like I had to, if I were to ask whether God existed or not, that was just assumed. That was just assumed. And so I went to instead of going to a Christian minister, I went to a Buddhist minister. To be a little bit easier to ask that question. And it was a lot easier. And you know what? I asked a question and my teacher said, that's your question. What a gift. She didn't say, oh, let me tell you, this is how you should believe, this is what you should think. What a gift that was for me. I didn't have to feel ashamed for having the question in the first place. And I think that's the gift of Zen. That's one of the gifts that Zen can give to us. You don't have to change anything about your daily routine. You don't have to change anything. You can still do your thing, whatever you need to do, whatever your religious organization is about, do that. Zen gives us permission, though, within whatever it is we're doing, to ask questions, right? To doubt. This doubt is so foundational to Zen. You have the ability, you have the capacity, and we should develop that capacity to bring doubt into our lives, right? Is this really the case? Is it true? If it's true, then how is it relevant for my life? So this was a question that I brought to my teacher. God exists. If God doesn't exist, why am I here? Because my identity, my sense of purpose was tied up with a belief in God. Right? It wasn't based in an experience. It was based in a belief. And so that was another question I had. What's my purpose? Why am I here? If I can't use the concept of God as a means to help me identify or recognize my own place in this world, do I have a place? How do I find that place? So my teacher calls this the Genjo Koan. What is our life about? Right here, right now. Right? What should we be doing? How should we do it? And it requires us to become more mindful. It'll be utterly clear what it is that you need to do when you practice mindfulness. It starts with calming the body down, calming the mind down, and you see, right? Otherwise, we're like a tiger thrashing around in a net, trying to look for the opening. What happens when the tiger relaxes? They see the opening, right? And so in the same way with our practice, we learn to calm the body down, calm the mind down, and then the answer comes. Right? One teacher said, insight doesn't come without calm. Tara Brach, I remember her saying that. If you don't have calm, you don't have insight. And that's, mindfulness, concentration, insight. Those are the three that are so important in our practice. Right. So, there's no mention of, and when I studied Buddhism academically in college, the teachers that I was working with said, Buddhism doesn't have a belief in a creator God. And I believed what they were saying. And even when I teach it at the community college today, the textbook we use says the same thing. It says there's no, some religions like Buddhism don't require a belief in God. It doesn't say that we shouldn't believe in God. It doesn't say that we should believe in God. It's just that the question that Buddha asked was a little bit different. How do we get out of suffering? Right? That was the main. Does belief in God help with getting out of suffering? If it does, well, maybe we should consider it. If it doesn't, well, what else can we consider? How do we get out of suffering? That was Buddha's question. So he wasn't concerned so much whether God exists, God doesn't exist. You've got to figure that's maybe somebody else's question. That wasn't the Buddha's question. All right. So if you go into almost any of the early sutras of the Buddha and also the later sutras, the Mahayana sutras, as well as studying Dogen, you can't help but come across statements about God. Or gods, or spirits, or ephemeral energies that are out there in the universe. You cannot help but come across these statements. And yet, we have this also, simultaneously, we have this rich philosophical tradition in the Zen tradition. It's very rich philosophy that you don't necessarily need to believe in God or gods or know God to dive deeply into this inquiry of who am I, why am I here, what am I about, what's my purpose? And yet we're confronted left and right. You can't help but, unless you turn a blind eye to the sutras and their myriads of references to gods and spirits, you can't help but come across this. And so I thought I use this Dharma talk to let's grapple with this a little bit. Maybe it'll be a little. I'm going to have fun with it. And keep in mind that when the Buddha was enlightened, of course, the Buddha grew up in what we would call today a Hindu culture in India. That was the milieu in which he grew up, and ideas like reincarnation, that was assumed. It wasn't a belief. It was just like, well, of course I came from a previous life. There's not a question of it. And it wasn't like if you didn't believe that, you would then somehow be excommunicated, right? It's just that's the way that people thought at that time, and still think today in many of the Asian countries. Not all, but in many. And so upon the Buddha's enlightenment, here he is. He's attained enlightenment. He's worked really hard for this. He's let go of all of his worldly attachments. He could have been a king. For heaven's sake, he could have been a king. He could have had loads of power. And loads of not just power, but control, right? He could have had a lot of control over lots of people. And he chooses to let go of that control. He chooses to let go of that control in favor of a life of a mendicant. And he amassed literally hundreds, if not thousands of students, some 2,000 monks and nuns during his lifetime, and probably more than that in lay students. And of course, it's a world religion today. So millions of people were affected by and continue to be affected by these profound, profound teachings that we have. And so he eschews worldly life. He takes on the robe, he shaves his head, he forgets about all the attractions of worldly life, enters into a forest, because that's what the people in those days did. They went into a forest and they found teachers. They meditated for long periods on end, and that's what he did. He found teachers, he studied with them, he learned various ways to use his mind to find peace within. And he worked with these people who were doing severe austerities. He ate 1 sesame seed a day for a number of months, almost died in that process, and realized, this isn't going to work for me. I got to start eating, I got to start nourishing my body. There's a middle approach here. I'm going to sit under, and then he restores his health. He sits under a Bodhi tree. And you can always sit under a tree and meditate too. Try it out. It's a wonderful practice. It's a good way to connect to the earth, to Mother Nature. Wonderful. He sat under the Bodhi tree, beautiful, huge tree in the middle of the forest. And he said, I'm not going to move here until I attain enlightenment. By the way, we're celebrating the enlightenment of the Buddha next month, at the beginning of next month. We'll have a retreat around that. So please join us for that, even if you just come for an hour. Come and sit with us, and we attain enlightenment. See, the Buddha didn't attain enlightenment for himself. He says, I and all beings together, past, present, and future, that means you and me, attain enlightenment together. And so we're celebrating that. We get to participate in the enlightenment of the Buddha. You don't have to do the work of the Buddha. It's already been done. You just come and sit and absorb the enlightenment of the Buddha. That's the practice. Anyways, he sits for 8 days, and at the morning of the 8th, attains enlightenment, and he's just glowing, right? And he's contemplating, well, what's my next move? What should I do next? And after several days, if not weeks, of inquiry around this, like, what do I do with this? What do I do with this amazing experience now? What happens? Lord Brahma comes to him and says, I want you to please go and teach people what you have learned. I know it's difficult. I know it's going to be hard for them to understand. Teach them. Indra, another god within the Indian pantheon. Lord Buddha, please go and teach. We wouldn't have Buddhism today if Buddha didn't listen to God telling him to teach. We miss that part. We often skip over that part, and especially us Zenis, we want to do everything ourselves. Right? Self-reliance. I'm going to just sit here and wake up all by myself. That's okay. That's okay. We can think that way. It's fine. But just remember, if the gods had not entreated Buddha to teach, we wouldn't be sitting here today. Brahma is considered the god of creation. All right? So there you go. It's right there. How do you get away from it? Now, I was thinking about the Tenzo Kyokun, the instructions to the cook. Some less than 2,000 years after the Buddha, Dogen comes, Japanese monk. He writes his instructions to the cook. And listen to this. Here's a statement. It's couched between two things that seem completely separate. Right? He's talking about cooking. He says, first, remove. This is not just keep in mind, Zen is very practical, but this is also spiritual instruction. He says, remove with great care all the bugs, small inedible beans, rice bran, sand, and stones from the rice. Remove with great care. In those days, they didn't have everything prettily packaged for us to purchase. You had to do a lot of work to eat. And they didn't have all the pesticides, right? So there's bugs. If you find a bug in your apple, you should praise the person who produced that apple, not having the pesticides on that apple. Wonderful. You got a bug, great. Remove it with great care. Some people want to just smash that bug, right? Oh, I'm going to throw this apple out. Well, we pay a price. We pay a big price with all the pesticides that go on to our food. Some of it is inevitable, maybe, but do we need that much? People obviously got by. Remove with great care the bugs, right? And then after that sentence, there's the sentence that says, while the tenzo is the Japanese word for cook in a monastery. While the tenzo is preparing both rice and vegetables, the tenzo's attendant chants a sutra and dedicates it to Zhao Gong, the guardian god of the oven. Okay? And then the following sentence reads, next, choose and take care of the ingredients for the soup greens. So this little statement about praying, dedicating a chant to the guardian of the oven is couched in between instructions about cooking. Remove the bugs, get the rice bran out, and take care of the ingredients for the soup greens, right? In the middle of those two sentences, he says, make sure the attendant to the cook is reciting a sutra to Zhao Gong, the guardian of the oven, the guardian spirit of the oven. So there it is, right? And this is so confusing. Do I believe in God? Do I not believe in God? Dogen later, where's that? Where's the sutra book? Is that? That one there. Got it. Thank you. Thanks. Where is it? What page is Jijio Zamai, the Samadhi? Which one is that on, George?
6.
6? A self-fulfilling Samadhi. Here it is. I got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, page 19. This is Dogen writing also. It says, from the first time you meet your master and receive the teaching, you have no need for incense offerings, homage paying, chanting Buddha's names, penance disciplines, or silent sutra readings. Only cast off body and mind in Zazen. Right? You read that and you think, well, what need is there to think about chanting anything to any gods or spirits or lighting incense and all of that stuff? All right? So do we do it or do we not do it? Same person is saying this. He's saying two different things. One time he says, chant the sutra to the kitchen god, and the next thing he writes, he says, there's no need to do that. So what do I do? Should I do it? Should I not do it? Right? It's very confusing. Isn't that confusing? I would be confused if I was coming to Zen and wondering, is God a part of this? Is God not a part of this? And then if you check out another Shingi, so the Shingi, again, those are the rules. A few generations after Dogen was Zen Master Keizan. And Dogen and Keizan, these guys are considered the founders of the Soto school of Zen. That's the practice that we do. And Keizan, he lives about 70, 80 years after Dogen. And he writes his own instructions. And a lot of what he wrote is the basis of the ceremonies that we do in Soto Zen today. And he has echoes, what we call echoes, transference of merit. The merit gets transferred. So whenever we chant a sutra, then we dedicate that sutra. It's very similar to asking God for help or saying, these people need our prayers. That's a merit transference. We have people's names on the altar there that have passed away, so we chant their names in the morning, and then we chant a sutra, and we dedicate the merit of the sutra chanting to those people to wish them and their families a easeful transition from this life to the next, whatever that might bring, whatever that might look like. Especially for the living, that they may have peace in their hearts in this transition. We wish that for others, right? So, and what we chanted this morning, may all beings, we wish for all beings, right? All beings, may they all attain the Buddha way. May they all attain wisdom. May all beings attain compassion, right? That's what we're wishing for. We're desiring for that to be. And so these echoes, many of them, Zen Master Keizan wrote these echoes about 700 years ago. And one of them here that I'd like to share with you would just blow your mind as to who he's chanting to. He's not simply chanting to a Buddha. Listen to this. Maybe some of you will be like, I'm getting out of here. We respectfully dedicate the great fortune accrued therefrom to the local earth spirits of this temple, the protectors of the Dharma, Deva and Naga, the good guardian spirits of all the buildings, the myriad sentient spirits of the threefold world, the guardian tutelaries overseeing the division of this current year. Just think about all of these various different connections to what is it, right? Listen to this, the controllers of negative and positive forces of the universe. Wow, the controllers of negative and positive forces of the universe. The protector deities of the Dharma and the temple buildings, the deity Chi Lan of Mount Chao Pao, great guardian god Bodhisattva Shu Li. May the divine light illumine far into the distance. May the good fortune become boundless, protect the Dharma, secure the well-being of people, and may whatever occurs with them be auspicious and bring rejoicing. So he's, of course, talking to a Japanese people of the 14th century. And this is one of the ways we can think of this is it's an adaptation of Buddhism to the world that it was entering into at that time. And in the native religion of Japan is Shinto, the way of the gods. And so in Shinto, gods were everywhere in everything, and especially in auspicious landscapes, right? If you find like a spectacular waterfall, and there's just like there's a pristineness, there's a kami, there's a god there, or it could be in certain people that have done something really, really beneficial for the community. They've helped them out in some way. They become kami. Kami is not the exact same level of God. I think that we might think of God in terms of say, Christianity. But you can see different layers of like God, and this is very similar to Hinduism. There's many layers of spirits and gods, and depending on the need. One of the Swami Satchidananda from Integral Yoga, he has this wonderful analogy of why there's so many different gods in Hinduism, and I think it applies to us as well. He says that if you think about the analogy of electricity, right, that socket, wall socket over here, that has 220 volts, and it's very practical. If you touch it, you're going to get a little shock, but it's not going to hurt you that bad, right? But it's very useful. We can plug things in, and it's thanks to it that we have the ability to zoom and light, and etc. But if you trace back this electricity closer and closer to its source, it becomes deadly. You can't readily use the power that comes raw out of a coal plant or wherever the generator is for this electricity. It comes from somewhere, and you can't plug into that. And in the same way, you have lesser gods because it's easier to communicate with those lesser gods. They're more for practical things. But then you have these other gods that are, like the big gods, the big guys, right? And you can't easily connect with them without it being lethal. So you have smaller, but they're all connected. Just like the electricity that comes out of that wall is connected to its source, wherever that comes from, whether it's wind or coal or something else, right? And so that may be one way to think about this. And then the next echo talks about the kitchen god here. We respectfully dedicate this superior merit accrued therefrom to the protector Deva, god of fire, Skanda, the overseer god of the kitchen cupboard, Chien Chi, and the fire god of the hearth. May the temple compound be calm and secure. Right. So these are wishes, these are prayers to, because keep in mind, I mean, people knew then they were not in control, right? In some ways, we seem to have lost that sensibility. We think we have the illusion of control with all of our technology. We have the illusion of control. But in those days, people didn't have that illusion as profound as it is for us today. And even if they did the very best they could and they were very mindful, still, there could be a fire set from this kitchen stove that burns down the whole temple. That kind of thing happens. And so you were like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to do the best I can, but I know there might be something else happening here, and I want to connect with those controlling forces that are beyond me, and so I get all my bases covered, right? And there's a place for the anxiety of that potential for burning down a building. There's a place for that anxiety to be channeled. Okay, I've done everything I can, but still, I don't know if this is going to work or not. Especially if I'm, somebody's new to a kitchen and they got to use wood, and things are more exposed. They don't have the same insulation and the things that we have today to protect us and prevent this kind of thing. So you can imagine the anxiety was high. Whole villages could burn down if somebody made a little mistake. So I'm going to invoke the gods of the hearth so that this place does not burn down. All right? There's so much I wanted to, I started writing about this. I just wanted to talk about the kitchen when I started thinking about this, and I had this one place marked out about chanting during eating that I wanted to talk about, and then it just blew up to this particular talk I'm giving now, because I really want to. I want to grapple with this idea of spirits, because you just cannot. But here's the thing that kind of bugs me is that most secular forms of meditation won't mention this at all. If they do, and even modern Buddhist commentators and teachers don't like to talk about God or gods. They just kind of glance or gloss over the subject, and I don't feel it does it quite justice. Or oftentimes what happens is that modern teachers will psychologize these beings, saying that these are elements of the subconscious. They're things that are within us that we should develop. I mean, and for some people, that's, they just kind of want to skirt around the issue of getting involved in something that's bigger than ourselves. So you can see that when you read a lot of the commentaries on Buddhist sutras or other things. There's a skipping over of this God thing or explaining it away for the secular reader so that it's more palatable. But that doesn't do justice to the tradition. And it also, I guess my biggest concern is that it kind of, there is like I said, there's a reason for people praying to spirits and gods. And even within the Christian tradition, there's a level of anxiety that we have that cannot be addressed simply by self-help, simply by learning how to use our attention. I mean, it can go far ways, don't get me wrong. We can calm the body down without belief in a God. But sometimes it's helpful to know that our energy of anxiety can be channeled when we put our palms together and we recognize we're not in control. We're not in complete control. And that's the other reason that I got into Buddhism, besides not wanting to talk about God, was because at the same time my professors were real big environmentalists at the same time, ecology and religion. They started this whole big thing, and they talked a lot about religion and ecology. And I happened to be taking a class with Mary Evelyn Tucker talking about Buddhism and ecology. And in my mind, as a 20-year-old, I was thinking, wow, Buddhism has a lot to say about ecology. I didn't realize it. It's got a lot to say about how we can address the climate crisis we're in. I was studying biology at the time. This was in the early 90s, and thinking, wow, we're in real trouble. There's all the pollution, species going extinct. Guess what? I had a lot of anxiety, and I didn't find a place to channel that within the tradition of my upbringing. Now, 30 years later, I see that there is that. But at that time, I was just exposed to Buddhism, and I thought, well, I got to find out more about this. And I was really turned on by the fact that Buddha says, beings are numberless. I vow to free them all. I was like, yeah, sign me up for that. I want to free all them beings that are going extinct. I want to make sure that the earth is going good and thriving. And, the Buddha meditated outside in a forest, and he loved animals, and, all of that. He intentionally not harming other creatures, living simply like the bee, doesn't disturb the flower when it goes around. Right? That's how we can be. I wanted to learn. And my teacher herself, she lived in this very, very simply. And she said, you can have a lot of money and be unhappy, and you can have next to nothing and be happy. Sign me up. I want to go there. I want to know what she knows. How did she figure that one out? Right? She had married a super wealthy businessman, had millions of dollars, and she wasn't happy. She got rid of all that stuff. She had really long hair down to her waist. She cut it off. She shaved her head, put on robes, got rid of all her fancy dresses, and lived simply in Japan and in Japanese temples for 12 years. And she said, I'm happier. I'm content. I wake up in the morning, I sit zazen, I have a breakfast, I chant sutras, I do things for other people. This is what it's about. That's what creates happiness, not this constant desire for stuff. We got to make other people happy. You want happiness? What can you do for other people? How do we serve? Not excluding ourselves, but how do we serve others, right? So I wanted to know. I wanted to study with her. How did she do that? Right? And the anxiety around for me, letting go of my material possessions, letting go of not having a job or not making a lot of money within the kind of job that I was doing while I was studying with her, and not feeling the support of the wider society. I remember going to Japan on a special trip with our Sangha to celebrate the 750th anniversary of Dogen, and I was mentioning how I was living I was a Sangha member from another Sangha, and I was mentioned to this person, I'm I'm in living at the sun with my teacher, studying with her. I don't have a job right now, but I have savings, and I didn't have very much savings, honestly, um, and I was using that to cover my simple expenses, car expenses and gas. That's what I had, a car and the gas, and then my food and lodging was taken care of. And the guy I told this to, and I was expecting like some supportive statement from this song. I remember like, oh wow, you're doing a great job. And what I got and said was, oh, we call that burning your nest egg. And I was like, oh, I should be acquiring money. That was I don't think he intended that, but my thought was, I immediately felt, oh, I'm not supported. I need to acquire some money because people are not going to support what I do. So, but that was the initial thought, and then I thought, okay, no, I don't want to follow that teacher. He somehow made it work. And her teaching was, she had her own anxieties when she became a Zen priest. She talked with her teacher, and she said, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know. Her teacher said, the only way you can train with me is if you become a Zen priest. And what does that mean? She asked him. Sit down, shut up, live on alms for 10 years. Sit down and do Zazen. Shut up means don't give any Dharma talks yet. You got to ripen your understanding. And live on alms means don't worry about wealth. You'll have to become dependent on the Japanese community and society for your sustenance, right? And she's like, well, I don't know if I can do that. Maybe I should keep my job. Maybe I should do that. And he said, if you have a heart for the way, you'll always have enough food to eat and clothing to wear. If you don't have a heart for the way, no matter how much food and clothing you have, it'll never be enough. Right? So she thought, okay, let me think about this. And so that was her inspiration. And I thought, well, that's awesome. I thought I heard that when I was going to church. I thought I heard that in church. Didn't Jesus say something like that? We should be, don't worry about where your food and clothing is going to come from. Didn't he say that? That's a quote I often get when I work at the hospital these days. Do not worry, do not be anxious about your life, where your food, if you're going to have enough food or clothing. Look at the birds of the field. Look at the lilies. First he says, look at the birds of the field. Aren't you more important than they are? God takes care of them, right? And then he says, look at the lilies of the field. Even Solomon, King Solomon, in all his glory, wasn't arrayed like one of these flowers. Look at that. That's a Zen statement right there. On one side, he says, look, you are way more important than a bird, aren't you? Birds are taken care of by God. Aren't you more important than they are? Right. And he says, on the other hand, he says, Solomon, in all his glory, he was not as beautiful as a flower. He equalized it. Right? So we got this idea, oh, we're better than the animals. We're better than the birds. But then Jesus says, no, look at these. This flower is way more beautiful. There it is. It's right there. So now when it comes to the other reason why I study this, how do we make this world better? How do we turn this around? I mean, here we are in a world that right now the COP30 conference going on. Maybe some of you heard of this. It's been going on for a number of years, but this is once a year there's a conference about climate change. There was the Paris Accord where countries have signed agreements to reduce their emissions by 2030. Right now, they're having a similar conference in Brazil. Guess which country is not present, right? And our president says that climate change is what's the word? It's a hoax. So we're in this other place. This isn't helpful language, and it creates tremendous anxiety for people who really want to do something. And we know oil and gas is a part of the problem. We want to do something. EPA presently, the EPA took $270,000 from the gas and oil industries, right? So lots of this stuff going on that we feel, well, may as well just throw in the towel, right? But we don't get, if you look at the spiritual, we don't get off like that. We don't get a free ticket just because people in power say these kinds of things. We still have to deal with the consequences of our actions. And Buddhism has ways to work with this as well. When we're studying in the kitchen, when we're cooking in the kitchen, there's so many things we can do. Number one, don't waste food, right? And Jisho, my partner, she just did a retreat about plastic and eliminating our plastic consumption. So there's so much stuff that we can do, and it's just a matter of gathering the momentum socially, but it's got to start somewhere. And I like to, just the past few days, I've been thinking about the climate crisis, and what if we could see the climate crisis and all this change that's happening to the environment as a Buddha in disguise, right? As a Buddha in disguise, and we put our palms together and we can bow to that Buddha, right? Asking, just like in olden days, they bowed to the god of the hearth, that it would not burn down the place. You can put your palms together, bow to the climate crisis Buddha, and pray. We do not burn down this planet so that life can persist. The stakes are real high. The stakes are much higher in our time. So we can easily move into anxiety and depression, or there's another way, a middle way, called activity, right? Doing something. And there's not one right response. There's not one right thing to do. There's your way. There's our way. There's many ways. And encouraging each other, right? Finding our ways to do these things, right? And can start with just planting some flowers in your yard, planting some flowers for the native bees and stuff. All right. Anyways, thank you so much for your time and your beautiful, wonderful presence. Many blessings to you, to your family, to your friends, and to your enemies. May they all be well, peaceful,